So, moving into the neurobiology of hatred. Tools of dialogue, intervention for youth reared amidst intractable conflict impacts brain, behavior, and peace-building attitudes. Let's get into the science and consequences, biological consequences, which are long-term when these atrocities occur. Myths, drama, and sacred texts have warned against the fragile nature of human love. The closer the affiliative bond, the quicker it can turn into hatred, suggesting similarities in the neurobiological underpinnings of love and hatred. Here, I offer a theoretical account on the neurobiology of hatred based on our model on the biology of human attachments and its three foundations. The oxytocin system, the affiliative brain, comprising the neural network sustaining attachment, and biobehavioral synchrony, the process by which humans create a coupled biology through coordinated action. These systems mature in mammals in the context of the mother-infant bond, and then transfer to support life within social groups. During this transition, they partition to support affiliation and solidarity to one's group and fear and hatred towards outgroup based on minor variations in social behavior. I present the tools of dialogue intervention for outgroup members based on social synchrony. Applied to Israeli and Palestinian youth and implementing RCT, we measured social behavior, attitudes, hormones, and social brain response before and after the 8-session intervention. Youth receiving the intervention increased reciprocity and reduced hostile behavior towards outgroup. Wow, that's incredible. Attenuated the neural marker of prejudice and increased neural empathic response, reduced cortisol and elevated oxytocin, and adapted attitudes of compromise, which cortisol is stress and oxytocin is like the feel-good bonding chemical. These neural changes predicted peace-building support 7 years later, when young adults can engage in civil responsibilities. Our intervention, the first to show long-term effects of intergroup intervention on brain and behavior, demonstrates how social synchrony can tilt the neurobiology of hatred towards the pole of affiliation. Amazing. Okay. Wanting to hit the high points. All right, I'll read the introduction. The inextricable knot between love and hatred has been well articulated since the ancient tale of Cain and Abel. Myths, scripture, drama, and sacred texts throughout the ages have warned against the fragile nature of human attachments. The closer the affiliative bond, the more it is prone to turn into hatred, aggression, jealousy, intrigue, suspicion, and even murder. Greek drama is replete with fathers, brothers, close friends, and fellow soldiers becoming, in a heartbeat, each other's worst enemy. As echoed by the famous Et tu, Brute, even maternal love, the most sacred symbol of eternal devotion, can lead to murder, as depicted by Euripides' Medea. Humans may discard old affiliations not only for the development of new ones, but for the commitments to a variety of gods, gurus, and grand causes, from workers of the world to transcendental mediators. The formation of new attachment may be triggered by hatred to an old love. Affiliative bonds can turn sour, and even a lasting and generally benevolent relationship often involves moments of pure hatred that, after passing, leave partners wonder at the intensity these moments elicit. Love and hatred seem to be closely intertwined, and the split between them stems more from the human need to keep those two intense emotions apart than from the day-by-day reality of long-term attachments. The long-told story of human bondage appears to contain more than the vicissitudes of love. Still, while human love and hatred have been depicted by any possible art form, poetry, literature, drama, dance, painting, sculpture, and cinema, the scientific foundations of love, and even more so of hatred, have not yet been described. In the following, I address the neurobiological underpinnings of love and hatred and discuss how the three tenets of biology of love proposed by our model can turn into hatred very quickly when fear prevails. Since the biology of love relies on ancient systems that support bond formation in mammals, altricial young-born Altricial young, born with immature brain, who require maternal presence and caregiving behavior to develop neurobiological systems that enable life in the social ecology. Systems that sustain maternal care have become very sensitive to minor variations in social behavior. Upon detection of such minute differences, all alarm systems are activated and trigger the fear response that prepares the body, brain, muscles, autonomic system, hormones, and behavior for the fight or flight response. I'm guessing that's or. While activating such widespread and energetically costly response to minute variations in social behavior may be overkill, the alternative, a complex response that requires time and brain space, is more evolutionarily risky. And when the stakes are so high, why take the chance? Why take a chance? The systems underpinning affiliation and stress management are ancient and evolved to respond automatically to any sign of danger. Variations that can distinguish real from imaginary danger or social behaviors that spell true risk from those that are simply unfamiliar, culture-specific, or odd require top-down processing that takes time and energy, resources the animal does not have when danger is imminent. The systems of love turn hatred are automatic and quick to activate, and most importantly, are behavior-based and triggered by social behaviors that are not identified as belonging to our clan. The 3 tenets of the biology of human attachments. Okay. Consistent with our model, I suggest that the evolution of mammals implied that systems that sustain stress management, adaptation, and endurance no longer developed in the young in the context of the group, as was in the case in fish, birds, or ants, but mature in the young mammal within the intimacy of the mother-infant bond. Hence, systems of support, resilience first develop through well-adapted caregiving, and then transfer to enable life in the social ecology. During that critical shift from the mother-infant bond to life within social groups, these systems partition to support both love and hatred by cementing the bond to one's own group, but, at the same time, clearly demarcating the in-group from the out-group and consolidating one's perception of the out-group as frightening, dangerous, and worthy of destruction. Yes, this double-edged perception is engraved into the young animal's brain, and neurobiological systems. And from this perspective, one may argue that the capacity to hate, demarcate fear, and prepares to destroy the outgroup, whose social behavior is different, strange, or scary, enables the biological possibility of love, or forming lasting bonds to both exclusive, other, and larger social groups. Our model depicted in Figure 1 and describes the figure... Nope. It describes the 3 foundations of the biology of love, as well as hatred: the oxytocin system, the affiliative brain, that is the neural attachment network, and biobehavioral synchrony. Okay, very cool. So, affiliative bonds, here we have oxytocin, affiliative brain, biobehavioral synchrony, that was just introduced. So oxytocin implicates plasticity, supports bonding, links stress and immunity, sustains meaning. Oxytocin is one of the chemicals that's given off when mothers or people who are breastfeeding, that it creates this parental bond between the child and the parent. Affiliative brain, fathering and pair bond, cortical networks, so like cortisol, in relation to stress, friendships, biobehavioral synchrony, biology and behavior, bonding based, nonverbal to mature, rupture and repair. Okay, so this is group living, and it splits off between love and hatred. Love, safety, cooperation, empathy; hatred, vigilance, fear, defense. Yeah, so ethnocentricity in hatred, where these feelings that you would normally associate with pro-social activities and bonding and feeling like there's a sense of community, that it is then channeled towards wanting to be an in-group. And then these stress hormones are connected to fear of the other. This is so interesting. Okay, so talking about oxytocin, it gives yes, so this is talking about breastfeeding, milk letdown, that helps with pair bonding and filial attachment. Oxytocin implicates plasticity, which is healthy, playing an important role in resilience that requires flexibility. Yeah, so it's an integrative system that crosstalks with stress, reward, and immune systems, integrates body and brain, and its receptors are widely distributed throughout the body. And how this can be influenced by, as it's saying, its environment through its epigenetic nature and maturation via a chain of environmental influences. OT is implicated in empathy, theory of mind, and the capacity to accurately perceive and share others' emotions, empathic accuracy. OT has also been suggested underpin the meaning dimension in human resilience by sustaining spirituality in the sense of transcendence, possibly through its anxiolytic effects and its impact on blurring the distinction between self and other, thus creating the states that provide the neurobiological basis for love. This is so interesting. The affiliative brain. The neural network that supports our capacity to form and maintain human attachments are built on the ancient subcortical structures that sustain maternal caregiving in mammals. Primed by the hormones of pregnancy, particularly OT and prolactin, the medial preoptic area of the hypothalamus sends projections to both the amygdala to increase maternal vigilance of infant safety, and the VTA, a key node in the subcortical dopamine network, to create a subcortical system that underpins maternal caregiving. This subcortical network consolidates through active caregiving and enables mammalian mothers, from rats to elephants, to recognize, invest, nurse, comfort, and provide a secure habitat for their offspring. Yeah, this is talking about human social life, that this impacts how this is established when people are growing up. Notably, the same network also supports human abstract attachments to God, homeland arts, the biosphere, and abstract commitments to which the individual is wholeheartedly attached. In a feedback loop manner, this social behavior, so it gets reinforced over time. Biobehavioral synchrony. Similar to the first two tenets, biobehavioral synchrony relies on ancient roots, the coordination of biological behavioral events during the social group processes that are observed ants, fish, or birds when coordinating movement to execute a survival-related goal, such as carrying a grain of wheat to shelter or flying to warmer climates. With the evolution of mammals, biobehavioral synchrony became linked with the mother-infant context and is defined as the coordination of biology and behavior between parent and child during moments of social contact. Moments of synchrony in mother and infant social behavior, such as gaze, positive affect, co-vocalization, or joint movement, provide a template for the coordination of physiological processes, such heart rhythms, hormonal release, and brain-to-brain synchrony, providing the mechanism by which the mature brain externally regulates the immature brain to social living. Yeah, so this learned behavior. Yeah, nonverbal exchange, dialogue, so all of these kinds of social interactions. This process also expands to other affiliative bonds and social relationships. So this specifically, this parent-infant-child relationship is replicated through, as seen in these other relationships to the rest of the world and other people. The neurobiology of attachment partitions into love and hatred during the transfer from maternal-infant bonding to life within social groups. While the three foundations of the biology of love support the transfer to social life, this process is complicated and acts as a double-edged sword. During the transfer from the safe haven of maternal care to affiliations that involve an increasing circle of family, friends, neighbors, and countrymen to which the child is gradually introduced, the demarcation between in-group members, those the infant learns to trust and eventually identify with, especially because of these external circumstances and how this parent-child relationship is dictating how they are viewing the world, and out-group members whom they are taught to fear, suspect, and eventually repudiate becomes a key issue in the child's socialization process. In societies that are rigid, under siege, or involved in a long-lasting war over resources, religions, or customs, this process is brought to an extreme focus, and the out-group is especially demonized. The argument being forwarded here is that the demarcation of friend from foe that is transmitted to young children through myriad of verbal and nonverbal signals is integrated into the child's brain and neurobiological systems and rides on the same processes as those which sustain affiliation to the social group. Such deep-seated and non-conscious internalization is very difficult to untangle. Yeah, so how these kinds of prejudices or pro-social relationships, whether it's viewed as positive or negative, that these are reinforced very early when people are growing up. And that people get this from their parents, their external environments, and these larger conflicts that are happening. Okay, box 1. The transfer to sociality via affiliation, cooperation, empathy, and love. The 3 foundations of the biology of love enable humans to form affiliations to social groups that range from small and concrete, like family, to large and abstract, like a nation, and create a sense of safety, sustain the formation of meaning systems through belonging to cultural, social traditions, and instill calmness and trust. These establish the neurobiological state that supports love. And then how these things actually are acting within this system. Oh, this is so interesting, talking about like the parent bonds, but then joint laughter. So how these experiences, religious ceremonies, all of these various aspects of life that are in our social environments, familial environments, national environments, this reinforces these ideas that are largely dictated by political forces. The transfer to sociality via fear, derogation, destruction, and hatred. The 3 foundations of the biology of love, while binding individuals to their loved ones and cementing their belongings to social groups, also function to demarcate friend from foe, increase fear of the other based on minor variations in social behavior, and dehumanize the enemy as worthy of destruction. So reinforcing the fear and the stress hormones that are associated with other, that these occur through, again, more of these social interactions and all of these different dynamics. Throughout history, humans have used the coordinated marching of soldiers not only to instill loyalty to king and country, but also as a potent threat to those who may attempt action against the in-group. Yeah, so this also is talking about how these larger social constructs, the act of doing this type of marching together, that it is a social interaction that people then feel connected to the people they're marching with, and it reinforces the idea that their camaraderie is based off of the fear of other people. Such powerful synchronous actions are imprinted in the brains of young people and are very difficult to reverse. Tools of dialogue, an intervention for youth reared amidst intractable conflict. Based on our model and the understanding that love and hatred are built on the same neurobiological systems that support bond formation in mammals and can quickly switch when social behavior is perceived as dangerous or even merely foreign, we built a synchrony-based intervention for Israeli and Palestinian youth. We chose to target the age of 16 to 18 years, as this is a time when youth are highly susceptible to propaganda and are easily influenced by charismatic leaders that offer hateful rhetoric and the illusion of belonging to a tightly knit group. At the same time, late adolescence is the period when abstract thought and cognitive empathy mature, and adolescents can appreciate multiple perspectives, rendering the effort to see the perspective of the enemy developmentally plausible. Guided by models that mark adolescence, a time of brain reorganization, which leads to heightened vulnerability alongside increased opportunities for social change. Our 8-week dialogue-enhancing group intervention targeted Israeli and Palestinian youth who mark a fourth generation reared in a climate of intractable conflict and intense hatred. Yeah, so this is essentially saying how when people are at this age, they are still, their brains are still developing, they're still susceptible to propaganda and being influenced by these outside structures and influences, but they also are coming into their own and are establishing more of their own consciousness and their own opinions and rebelling against certain things or deciding for themselves if they agree with certain structures. The intervention was informed by our conceptual framework of biobehavioral synchrony and focused on synchronous actions, actual conversations, affiliative familiarization, and knowledge on the central obstacles, as well as the key behavioral components of respectful dialogue among warring parties. Before and after the intervention, which was implemented within a randomized controlled trial, we observed social behavior during one-on-one interactions between outgroup members, assayed stress, cortisol, and affiliation, oxytocin hormones, imaged the brain basis of empathy and prejudice. That is such a smart way to measure that, of like looking at these hormones. And assessed adolescents' attitudes toward the conflict and their opinions on whether peace is possible and the pathways for reaching it. 7 years after the intervention, when youth were already young adults who can engage in civil duties and responsibilities, we returned to the participants and reevaluated their opinions on the conflict and their attitudes towards participation in peace-building efforts. Oh, this is so fascinating. Oh, and these actions were videotaped or interactions to make sure that they have evidence of this. They conducted in-depth interviews. Ghibli's appetite has exploded over the past few days. Really? Oh, what is he eating? What is he craving? Oh, and then they do brain imaging as well. Wow. So like how it affects the brain. Implementing the tools of dialogue. Based on the biobehavioral synchrony frame, we began and ended each session with synchronous or ritualized acts, such as folk songs that involved movement in Hebrew or Arabic, joint drumming, which is known to have a soothing effect in times of stress, reading of poetry in either language, or reciting from the Bible or Quran in Hebrew and Arabic. After the introduction of the session topics, sessions continued with specific group activities that were designated for each session and involved either one-on-one interaction tasks for small groups that were composed of Jewish and Arab members and needed cooperation from members who then presented their efforts to the entire group, or whole group discussions on selected topics, at time in a form of games or special tasks. We began and ended each session in ritualized, joint, and synchronous actions to induce positive energy, acceptance, and cooperation, and to stimulate the biology of love. What's so fascinating about this is that essentially it's like if you talk to people who you are taught to hate, that and engage in activities, actually try to get to know each other, have a good faith dialogue, learn about each other's cultures, that encourages empathy. Like that, the science backs that up. To the point, Gamora's platter is apt for his pillaging. Naughty. That's what Kit does. We have to make sure that he doesn't steal Juniper's food. Sometimes when I give them like a little treat at night, I have to shut him in this office so that he doesn't eat all of hers, or like he doesn't intimidate her and scare her away. He's having beef chicken raw food with toppers. Oh, cute. I've been wanting to try raw food with our cats. Good faith science rocks. I know. And doing it in an ethical manner. 6 effects of the tools of dialogue intervention on youth social behavior, hormones, and attitudes. So they're assessing reciprocity. They found a significant decrease in hostility. What? That is incredible. That some of these neural pathways have changed. That discussions are not as stress inducing. Wow. Affiliation and stress hormones. Oh, they collected saliva samples. Yeah, it is possible that youth with greater neural plasticity, whose OT system is initially more malleable, were more impacted by the intervention and were able to alter their perceptions. Yeah, just neural plasticity in general makes it so that people are more resilient and are able to bounce back and reframe things, learn from experiences better. Since the biology of hatred is built on fear, the attenuation of the endocrine fear response is an index of the true success of our intervention at the biological level. Yes. And they are able to actually have more of a capacity to look at multiple perspectives. 7 effects of the intervention on the brain basis of empathy and prejudice. Empathy is a key feature of human sociality and the social function which received the most extensive neuroscientific research. To image the neural empathic response, we used a well-validated set of pictures that show hands and feet in physical pain, as compared to identical pictures without the painful element. Oh, to study the brain's empathic response. Highlighting how oxytocin and biobehavioral synchrony, components of the biology of love, can function in the service of hatred. Yeah, when you have these negative behaviors and perceptions that are reinforced by like the hormones that are for that encourage empathy. Aubrey's science communication is great. Maybe we should have changed the category on Twitch. Oh, whoops. True. I guess I could still do that. We believe that altering adolescents' brain response to outgroup is among the key successes of our intervention that highlights the deep-seated effects on the social brain during a critical period of its maturation. Prejudice is a non-conscious response to those who are unlike us, which stems from humans' reliance on group living for survival and has led to a biased assessment of their social environment. Yeah, this is like how when we were reading Rousseau, him talking about that, which is why you brought this up in the first place. It just fits in so well. Our findings are consistent with a previous study of the IAT using EEG, which showed that the only two regions that plausibly reflect the intergroup bias were the RL gyrus and the MCC, which occurred early and later, respectively. This prejudice neural marker was negatively correlated with the adolescent's attitudes of belief in peace and with greater social engagement during interaction with outgroup members. This suggests that the personal meetings with members, the outgroup, and the coordinated activity, as well as understanding the nature of prejudice and its potential hazards, impact youth not only at the behavioral level, but also at the neural, non-conscious level. Wow. The most important question to consider with regards to any intervention is its long-term impact. Outcome of any intervention to mitigate intergroup conflict has so far been very grim. No intervention has shown effects for more than several months. Many yielded null results, most were poorly conducted and were not implemented in the context of RCT, and none tested intervention effects on the brain. In this context, our tools of dialogue intervention built the conceptual frame of the neurobiology of human attachments, and the mechanism of biobehavioral synchrony is highly promising. So 7 years after the intervention, I believe peace is possible. Eventually, Jews and Arabs will have to achieve peace. I engage in active peace-building efforts. This is really optimistic, actually. That when the work is being done to find common ground and acceptance and learn about other people, that it has this long-term biological effect is so encouraging and fascinating. Applying the tools of dialogue intervention to other contexts of intergroup conflict. Intergroup conflict between races, religions, nations, tribes, or ethnicities is among the world's most imminent problems, and a UNICEF report of 2018 has indicated that 1 in 5 children globally is growing up in the context of intergroup hatred, active conflict, strife, and danger. Intergroup conflicts lead to horrible atrocities that are often directed towards civilian populations. Yes. Create immense suffering and may perpetuate for decades, so that generation after generation are born into a bleeding conflict. Puts it into perspective how far-reaching these dialogue interventions can go. Yes. Yeah. Of taking the time to engage in a good faith manner has such long-lasting effects. Our approach differs from most intergroup interventions that are built on explanation, social cognitions, cognitive biases, and the perception of justice. We allow our participants to do things together. Yes. It encourages these pro-social relationships and redirects these neural pathways so that it is supporting the relationship rather than reinforcing the fear response. What? Adaptation of the intervention can target interracial contexts of individuals born in the same country that speak the same language but carry long-term issues related to prejudice, inequality, resentment, and fear towards outgroup members. Okay, examples of this: blacks and whites in the US or Native Americans in the US or Canada. So it can be applied to so many different things. The intervention may be applied to those whose mother tongue is different from the majority of their fellow citizens, those who come not only from a different background, but from a foreign country. This can include immigrants that have fled to countries that offer a better life in Europe or North America, and the dialogue between the groups has strong imbalance of power and contains elements of fear, and at times dehumanization of the immigrant. Yep, that's very relevant to what's happening now. Ultimately, the intervention can be beneficial to societies that have been in active war against each other but share a border or have a dispute over the same land. In such contexts, it is possible that people to people initiatives using instruments such as tools of dialogue may bring about change from the bottom up through personal encounters, familiarity, and empathy despite obstacles placed by governments and political and religious leaders. In sum, love and hatred, humans' most fundamental emotions, are supported by ancient systems that are entrenched, difficult to change, and based on social behavior. Applying the mechanisms of synchrony, familiarity, and coordination in the context of an evidence based intervention may tilt the biology of hatred, prejudice, and ethnocentricity towards the pole of love, empathy, and dialogue. While interventions are costly and effortful, their impact on the general public is slow and checkered, and the immense endeavor may at times feel futile. The other option is indifference, helplessness, and despair. We must remember that despair is not an option, yeah. We are obligated to our children to find the best options science can offer to make a better world for a future of coexistence, tolerance, and respect. This is incredible of how this research done in a very comprehensive way that actually makes it so it has far-reaching effects and is implementing all these various aspects of life. It's not just like taking a class of like unlearning biases. It's actually getting to know people up close and personal. How like that just reinforces all of the research of like child development and how these things develop over time with prejudices and the influence of bigotry perpetuated by these societies. Wow. Thank you for sharing this. This is incredible.